Hi there, I'm Uncle David, and I am really happy to bring a report to you for Extreme Faith Reports. I've been traveling a lot, I've been working very hard, and God has been doing great things, and I want to share some of His great interventions, miracles, provisions. As we go along, I hope this report will encourage you greatly. I want to start with Australia. I just got back from Australia a few weeks ago and New Zealand, speaking appointments there, and we had really a time of sharing with in Brisbane in Australia, working with our team there. We used to have a pretty big team that is downsized a little bit over the years, many financial difficulties and many other things, but things are picking up, and we were able to have meetings, and we were able to start developing production again and planning on mission aviation. We founded the S74 Family Media, and on the S74 Family Media, it was for the purpose of creating videos that can go on public television using music, the healing of sacred music mixed with beautiful professional nature shots. And already the doors are opening in North America and in Europe, and as well as the South Pacific, to be able to place these videos on commercial TV stations and begin to reach people that way. So be on the lookout for the S74 Family Media, because it's going to be touching a lot of lives, especially across Australia. The First Light Broadcasting Network was started over 5 years ago in New Zealand. We created this organization for the purpose of reaching the public with the good news of the gospel. And God was good to us, gave us the last channel available on national television. And we went on national television over 5 years ago and have been broadcasting 24/7 in New Zealand. And I would just like to quote the newspapers. The newspapers say, finally a TV station worth watching. Every single home that can pick up television picks up the First Light Broadcasting Network. And as some of our board members said, they don't have any neighbors that they know of that don't watch it. And people are calling and walking into churches, becoming baptized, and many of them have accepted the health message as the initial point of interest, and that led to the opening of an understanding and a desire to learn more about the Bible and truth. So we want to congratulate the hardworking team of First Light Broadcasting Network and thank the Lord for His provision. It's very expensive. Since we started broadcasting on television, we've now added satellite, and the satellite covers New Zealand and the areas that don't have TV and neighboring regions. So it's been God's provision. We don't know how He does it, but through the viewers. The first 3 years were covered through more private donations, but after that funding ran out, God has been faithful to provide the funding from viewers. And that comes in every month in order to pay the bills. It's one of our most expensive networks, even though not one of our biggest, but it is one of our most expensive, and we're grateful that God has provided every month for First Light. One of the things that we did was to investigate in Australia what we could do to put First Light as well as others make it available to the public in Australia. And there's a lot of foreign populations that are watching are wanting to watch their native language programming. And so we approached one of these broadcasters, and they have agreed already. We're getting ready to sign the contract. We have agreed on the pricing, and this will allow Spanish speakers to receive our Advenir Spanish television from Bolivia. The Portuguese speakers, Terceiro Anjo, which means the third angel, they will receive 24/7 in their homes as well. And then First Light Broadcasting Network will be streamed across Australia also via the internet initially. And one of these days, our dream and our prayer is that it will also be broadcasting across Australia. It's much more expensive, much bigger, a bigger viewing population, but this is the direction we're going, and we know that God will make it happen one of these days very soon. We went to work in Guyana, and in Guyana we have quite a few projects. It's one of our oldest projects. But while I was in Australia, we suffered a tremendous loss. One of our missionaries, Christopher Matthews. You can see some of the pictures here as he was climbing this cliff. In the village of Arau, there's a little mountain that looks like a bread loaf. And you can climb up about halfway at a decent angle, but from there it goes pretty vertical. And evidently Christopher and some of the local native missionaries, Christopher said he wanted to climb it, so they went with him. And he was climbing the cliff. You can see him there on the edge of the cliff. And on these both first two pictures, I put a yellow circle around it. I just drew a circle there so you can see where he was. Those are the last pictures we have of him alive. He slipped and fell. We don't know the exact details of how it happened, except that suddenly he fell off the edge of the cliff and he fell to his death. And he left a wife there on the right. You can see a wife and two daughters. On the leftmost side is one of our missionaries from the Czech Republic that came to be with the wife and the two little daughters that Christopher left. It was a very tragic event, but the two little daughters, quoted in saying, "Our daddy died because he was doing God's work, and he died doing God's work." And so they are now back in the States, and Christopher's body was cremated, and the widow went back with the ashes. Part of the ashes were left in Guyana, and he was buried there in Kaikan, where they were living, in the same village where I started working there 23 years ago. So we say goodbye to Christopher. Thank you for the work that you did, the influence, and we are thankful for the consecrated life that you gave an example there of for other missionaries. And we thank the wife and the children and the other family members for sharing Christopher with us, even though it cost him his life. We miss him greatly. He was a good worker. We had another tragedy follow on the same day. On the same day that we lost Christopher, we sent in a mission airplane to pick up the body, and the mission airplane the pilot decided that instead of spending the night, because the body was pretty well injured, had some body fluids and others, and the head had been fractured pretty badly in the back of the head. And so the pilot decided to fly the body that night to town. Measured the fuel, made the decision that there wasn't enough fuel, and took off for town, but had to fly at night, got special permission to fly at night in Guyana. And unfortunately, about 15 minutes before arriving at the airport, we were all waiting, we were all watching the tracking on the satellite. The spot suddenly stopped, and we received a phone call from the pilot. "We're down, and we're injured. Please come and get us." The military was dispatched immediately. We were able to get a position report from the pilot, and the helicopter went in with a rescue team, pulled out the pilot, the policeman that was on board, and then went back the next day and brought in Christopher's body. There is Lincoln. A couple days later, after having gone to the emergency room, we're just grateful we didn't lose two missionaries that day, that God preserved their life. The airplane is in the process of being disassembled. The engine will be reused, and of course it will be re-inspected. It will be taken apart and inspected, and the instruments that can be used will be overhauled, and most of those will be recovered. We don't know yet the final result on the airplane because the government has been doing the investigations, and we have been unable to do full access until now. So we're in process, but we're glad that Lincoln is alive, and of course his wife Monica is as well. So even though we have suffered a loss there, we are grateful that God provided safety for them in at nighttime crashing in the trees. No pilot wants to go down at night, but if you're going to go down in the trees, that's about the worst scenario you can have. And he missed all the big trees and only went into the bushes. And so we're glad for that. The final cause of the investigation will be released. It hasn't been released yet. The logbooks are in order. The government said everything. The maintenance was in order. So we're awaiting a final conclusion from the investigators. During this same time, just prior to the accident, God had provided one of my goals is always to have a locally registered airplane in every country. Some countries, all of them are registered locally. Others, we have U.S. airplanes only, and others we have locally registered. And in Guyana, we had just purchased this airplane. If you notice, the registration on the tail is 8 Romeo, stands for Guyana, just like N for November is in North America. And then JIL. JIL stands for Jesus is Lord. We bought it from a Christian pilot, owner, and he was very sad to let that registration go, but he said it's going into another organization that works for the Lord, so I'm very happy. So this is the replacement airplane for the plane that went down, and we're going to be, even though the engine is in good shape, the time has run out, and so we're going to overhaul the engine, and it'll be flying soon to replace the plane that went down. We're grateful for that. One of our schools that operated for many, many years along the Berbice River in Guyana was Kimbia Mission Academy, KMA. The McDaniels family dedicated many, many years to that place, but then they left to work down in South America and Argentina, and we weren't able to find administration to keep the school running for several years, so it deteriorated the buildings. Some of the wasps moved in, and even the fence broke down and the cattle started sleeping in the school building. You can imagine what that did. So we are very grateful that 2 families, one Cuban Americans moved down, another family from Bolivia, a master carpenter moved in with his family, and they have refurbished the buildings. We're putting in quite a bit of an investment into putting in a runway so we can have easy in and easy out access or for emergencies or supplies. The boats can bring in on the river, they can bring in the supplies, but usually it takes a good day or 2 to do that, and so therefore the airplane having access will be nice, and we look forward to opening Kimbia up. This project needs carpenters, construction, needs mechanics. We have tractors and we have other equipment that needs maintenance. So if there's volunteers that are technically oriented, this is the perfect timing for that. Eventually, when the school is ready to open, we'll need teachers as well. That's still a little bit away yet as we fix up all the infrastructure and get the place going and put the runway in. So we're delighted to see a new paint job on Kimbia Mission Academy, a new face, and so is the community. They're very happy to see things going forward. In Bethany, in Guyana, there's a new house along the runway. This is the mission pilot house. Actually, that's where I sleep every time. And other missionaries sleep there too. We had other missionaries come in, and they stayed in my little house there. It's made out of a bullet wood. The wood is heavier than water, and it's very hard, and it's not subject to the same termites and the same deterioration. But the local natives there cut the wood, dried it, and the master carpenter built it. So we have an extra house there. In fact, we have several new houses. Unpainted, the wood is nice, but eventually, of course, the sun changes its color. So the best way to protect it is to put paint on it. On the far right, you can see the painted house. I haven't even been there since it was painted yet. I'm looking forward to going back in another week or so to see the house. But it's right in front of the runway. You can see a young missionary lady from Bolivia sitting on our front porch, and the runway is right in front of the house. And you can watch all the planes, or you can land right there and park the airplane at our hangar. And that's our flight-based maintenance flight base. And so pilots, mechanics are really needed in Guyana. If you're a pilot or if you're a mechanic, or both, or medical, we would look forward to hearing from you. You can apply online at gmivolunteers.org. GMI, Gospel Ministries International, gmivolunteers.org, and you'll see it on the bottom of your screen if you couldn't write that down. So we're glad to have a place to sleep there, and for other pilots and missionaries to also have a place to sleep. It is located right next to the Bethany Medical Missionary College, which is just a quarter mile to the woods, and it's been operating a long time, training missionaries and medical with medical training as well. Following the return back from Australia, we went to Mexico. Now in Mexico, as you know, some of you have read Mission Pilot. They know that we started our mission work there years ago, and you know that I was hijacked and had spent some prison time and falsely accused and did medical work in prison and then released because of the medical work. It was the first time I went down to the southern part of Mexico. But we have a project south of Cancun, just north of Belize, in a place called Bacalar. There's a beautiful lake there. It's an area of many lakes. And on the lake there, we bought about 190 acres. Half of it is dedicated to the project, and half of it will be dedicated to allowing people who want to buy plots of land to move out of the cities like Mexico City. They can come down and live there. They can help on the project, or they can retire. But it's going to be dedicated for missionary work. And you can see the lake there. You can see the road that you drive in on. It has nearly 3,000 coconut trees. So if you like coconuts, or you can drink water, even my technical staff here is laughing and wishing they had coconut water to drink right now. Well, I had all the coconut I could eat and all the coconut milk I could drink while I was there. But we're looking forward to starting it. It's very interesting what happened. The new lifestyle center called Plenitud and Esperanza, which means plenitude or a place of ample supplies and hope. And it's located on the Nobec Lake near Bacalar. You can look at it on the map. But we've been paying on it for over a year. And it's interesting that when we went down to the meetings, I landed with the airplane in Mexico, but there was a problem with one of the documents. I had to get another copy. And so I went commercially, and I got to Mexico City and had to make my speaking appointment on Friday. And a brother offered to drive me down for 6 hours. So he came to the airport, picked me up, and as we were driving down, he started asking a lot of questions about the project. And as we were driving, he got more and more enthusiastic. He said, I want to be part of this project. And we were already about 2/3 done with paying for the property, because it's a large property and it's in an expensive section. In fact, they found one of the oldest Mayan cities in Mexico is recently there, and it just raised all the prices of the property because of the cultural tourist attraction that area will be. And so as we were driving, when we got done, he told our accountant, I'm going to send a donation to help pay for the property. And believe it or not, I couldn't hardly believe it, but he paid for almost the entire balance. There's just a tiny little bit left, and hopefully this next month we can settle that. So the Lord answered our prayer, and it was only based on the fact that somebody drove me down to my speaking appointment, and he evidently was a businessman, had some resources, and wanted to help. So I was wondering why God let me have a document problem with the airplane, and now I know why. Because he wanted me to ride with his brother down there, and it would have made a much bigger impact and blessing. Here's a picture of the lake off of the maps on the internet, and then kind of a design off to the right. It's in Spanish there. You have the lake, and then you have a little area for walking where the coconuts are, and then you have the place where where we're going to build a wellness center, housing for missionaries, and in the very back there, next to the runway, there'll be all these. There's I think it's about 30. This is just a rough draft here that I could find, but about 30 1 hectare properties, plots about 2.2 acres, private properties people can get if they want to live in Mexico, and if they want to live out of the city and near a wellness center where they can participate or they can receive care as well. So this is an exciting project that's going there, and it's combined also with a TV project, a TV and radio, which we've been working on for a long time, and we're in the process right now of getting our first license for a major city in Mexico, and then we already have the radio license. We need the TV license, and we're working with the government to get that first issued there. The bulldozers have already been to the property. They've already been clearing it for putting in the runway, putting in the roads where the houses are going to be built, so people can go in and see where they'd like to have their plot of property. We already have about 3 or 4 families already that have put money down to be able to separate their property. And of course, first come, first served. Those they get to choose, have more choices. Then we did evangelism in Oaxaca. Oaxaca is famous for its cheese. It's one of my favorite cheeses that I don't eat. I fell in love with Oaxaca cheese, but I did not eat any because I don't eat cheese anymore. At least when I have a choice. Sometimes they put it in food that I eat when they serve me on the road. But that's what it's famous for. And it has very delicious cheese that they make famous around the world. But Oaxaca is also a place of opportunity. It's a place where people are interested in getting to know the Lord. We had meetings in a small churches, bigger churches. There was a tent outside for overflow for those that could not get in. And then after that, we went down to Chiapas. Now, Chiapas is the southernmost state of Mexico where I used to work. When I was 25 years old, our first general conference call came for that work to be hospital administrator, pilot, and director of the nursing school and secondary school there in Bella Vista. And that's where I was hijacked. And so I was anxious to go back. I hadn't been back for 32 years. And we had these very large meetings, the battles of faith, batallas de fe, we call it in Spanish. And we had this very large meeting at the bottom there, and it went very, very well attended by about 3,000 people, plus the streaming and broadcasting that we had around the world. It was a very blessed time. I also had a chance to go visit Bella Vista and visit the prison where I was being held in that very same city of Tapachula. And I'll show you some pictures of that right now, but it was an emotional time to actually go back and visit where I was in prison. I went to visit some prisoners and prayed with them too. There's some prisoners there that needed prayer. And it was a wonderful time. The next Battles of Faith is coming up in May, the middle of May, and it'll be in Florida, in West Palm Beach, and then after that in Puerto Rico, the third week of May of 2019, this year. This is where we first went to work in Mexico years ago, 35 years ago approximately, and a little over, maybe 38. And here we are, we just landed, and you notice that we have two little girls by our side there by the airplane, and my wife is holding a little Mexican baby. And that's the little baby we adopted. You can see his picture there eating a mango. Very acute memories of that. And in Mexico, when you're from the state of Chiapas, you're called a Chiapaneco. Well, the Chiapaneco in Spanish now became a Chiapanecote, a big man. And I'll show you a picture of what he's like today. But there he was as a little child with our two little daughters landing in Mexico. That's the plane I was hijacked in. And the nurses of the nursing school, the Loma Linda, every 6 months Loma Linda would send a team of doctors down and then a team of dentists. And I would fly them all around and we would do dental work throughout the state with the airplane. And so I was very grateful for that partnership with Loma Linda that we had there. Now, today, 38 years later, there's our little house upper left that we used to live in. I hadn't been in that house since we had to leave. And there's our Chiapanecote, our son Carlos today. He's now finished his graduate work in England, and he's working here in the U.S. Looking forward to trying to encourage him to join us in South America someday. Pray for him, wouldn't you? Because we'd love to have him working with us. He's always laughing. I think he was born laughing. I think the nurses said he was smiling when he was born. Usually babies are crying. So he's still smiling, and he's still a sweetheart. We've had since then adopted two children, a Peruvian son and a daughter that we couldn't live without also, and we're just very proud of them. But this is about Mexico, so I put his picture there. There I'm standing on the far right, upper right. I'm standing in front of the courtyard. My cell is that door to my right, your left. I used to be in that cell with 70 other prisoners every night, and slept on a cement floor. And it's touches my heart to even think about what it was like. It was difficult days in my life, but the Lord preserved me and gave me medical work. I had some more pictures. I can't put them all on the screen. And I went back to Bella Vista. There's a Dr. Grease who delivered Carlos. He's still working there with his wife and running the school there. The school is still going, a secondary and primary school. I'm so grateful for their mission, work, and sacrifice. And I had a picture taken with me behind bars. I remember standing in those same bars as the doctor, the surgeon, Dr. Mauricio, came by and he came to visit me, and he did 2 surgeries. He took 2 patients to the hospital that I had found that had appendicitis, and he took out their appendix and came back and helped me take care of patients in the clinic He had supplies. I had nothing. I just had a stethoscope. And that was all they gave me. And I was seeing patients. But on those same bars, he said, Capitan, I'm so sorry to see you here. And he went back home, and I stayed behind bars. And I took a picture there. God was good. And those memories of God's gratefulness, of God's care during those times, during those dark, dark days when you had no hope and we thought we were going to be there 14 years. We're glad the work is still continuing, and we're glad that God still cares for His people. In Australia, meanwhile, my wife is in Australia. I was back in Mexico working. The reason we went to Australia to begin with was because we had little twin boys, twin grandchildren. Our daughter, our second daughter, and they were premature, and so they need care every 2 hours round the clock. And while the ladies took care of the babies, I cooked all the meals, and I helped them. And of course I was preaching on the weekends in different churches. But once their eyes opened, and once they started being aware of the world, they started getting cuter and cuter. And sometimes they're just like little angels, and sometimes they're not like little angels. and we have a lot of fun just being with them, and we just still miss them terribly being here now. But we're getting ready to go to South America, where one of our airplanes is getting engines put on it, 2 new engines, and we're grateful for those that made it possible for us to put engines on the airplane so we can keep flying and keep working. So we're just waiting for those engines to go on so we can fly to South America again and continue the work. We lost an airplane last year. Many of you remember that I had a terrible accident, the first time I've ever totaled an airplane in my life in 40 years of flying. And that was our nicest airplane. And I only had a tiny little scratch on my head, and the co-pilot was uninjured. No severe injuries of any kind. But the airplane was insured enough to cover all the loans and liabilities we had, so we paid all of those. And we were just sad to lose our nicest airplane. It was donated by a physician on the West Coast, and I've been in communication with him, and he was very kind to us, and we made very good use of the airplane. But we lost it, and the insurance paid off all the debts, and we were able to have a little left over to put some engines on some other airplanes. And we missed that airplane, and we just wondered if that was the end of that particular function, if that's what God had in mind. We just trusted Him, because whether we have airplanes or don't have airplanes, if we have money or don't have money, if we have food or don't have food, it's really God's problem. He said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you," which means that whatever He gives us, that's what He wants us to have. We don't do fundraising. We don't send out brochures requesting money. Occasionally we send out a thank you to all the donors that have been supporting, but we don't make requests. Some of our missionaries, we've allowed them to do it, and we leave that freedom, we leave that to them. But we as an organization don't send out magazines. We don't publish brochures for the purpose of raising funds. In fact, our primary focus is on doing the work, not on raising money. We figure that if God provides the money, then we keep working. And if He doesn't, our work is done, because God owns all the resources. And if He owns all the resources, why should we focus a large team of people doing nothing but fundraising in order to be able to survive? There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's not a sin to do that. We just chose to invest our time in working and let God take care of us. And so while many people are out raising money, we're out caring for the sick. We're out caring, flying those to the hospital, doing evangelism, and working. And it's allowed us to grow into 96 countries in the last 22 years. And while some organizations are working in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 countries, we've been seizing opportunities all over the world. And like I mentioned, there's nothing wrong with doing it. They're doing a wonderful work. All of those organizations are doing God's work too. But time is short, and we're fighting a deadline, and we're fighting a closing door that will close one of these days. And so how do you seize these opportunities? It's like the ship is sinking, and we have to launch as many life jackets as we can, given the time we have. And we have chosen as our primary philosophy to work and trust God. with our sustenance. And so we lost this airplane, and we were wondering, Lord, is this, if this is what you want us to stop working in the mountains with carrying the big supplies? Well, God has provided for the smaller airplanes, but we still need some seaplanes. We still need float planes in Peru, and we still need float planes for Brazil. We're going to get one of these days. We know God's going to do that, but particularly in this class of airplane, large, pressurized cabin class airplanes, which we use to move supplies back and forth, move people back and forth. This was a very big need that we had. And so the question was, is this the end of that? Do we just stick to the smaller airplanes, smaller twins, and just move supplies back and forth? Or is there a place for moving missionaries across great distances and making sure that people get to where they're going and that supplies get to where they're going? Well, we lost that airplane, and we were praying. We accepted the fact that God maybe was closing that door. But no, God had a greater work for us to do. And just while we were in Australia the week before, I got a phone call. And just last week, about a week ago from this report, God replaced that airplane with these 6 airplanes. Each of them bigger than the airplane we lost, except for one. One is a little smaller. The 5 of them are bigger. They have 2 more seats. They're all pressurized. One of them is a turbine aircraft capable of longer distances and speeds. Very nice air ambulance. Some of them, most of them equipped for air ambulance work as well. And so we realize, I'm going on Sunday, just in 2 days, I'll be joining some mechanics and pilots out in New Mexico, where these planes are operational. A non-church member closed his company, and he donated already all these airplanes to our organization, and is delighted that these airplanes will be involved in mission work. One of them is going to the Philippines. One of them is going to Bolivia. One of them probably will be going to the South Pacific. Another one possibly to Mexico. And we have another 2 airplanes that we're trying to place right now at this time. We don't know yet. They were flying 2 years ago very nicely, in very good condition, but we have to do a full inspection to make sure if we can ferry them, move them, and get them inspected so we can begin flying them again. So God evidently has a work to do, and we did not expect. 1 would have been very nice. 6, it's because God has something great to do. That means we need pilots. In fact, I'm going to be talking to one of their ambulance pilots that has been flying these airplanes. He is an Adventist, and he would like to be a missionary pilot. So maybe he's the one that will help us to fly. We have, of course, several pilots that will be flying them, but he's the one that maybe will be working closely with me and one other pilot to be able to place these airplanes and to be able to use them. God has a great work to do. And that brings up a question. The question is a question that is maybe on many of mine, and some have written me emails. If you're working so hard, Uncle David, and you're making plans for the future, what about the crisis? Good question, huh? What about the crisis? What about our preparation? What about the close of probation? What about the Sunday law? Where should we go? Why aren't you in hiding? Why aren't you moving away into the jungles? You know, the loud cry is ahead of us. The greatest work the church has ever done will be done in the future. And so we're not in close down mode, we're in expansion mode. Do I still believe a great crisis is looming upon us very, very soon, possibly in a matter of weeks? Yes. Could it be that God will do like what he did with Rome? Rome circled Jerusalem in the spring of AD 70, but did not destroy it until September. Could there be some months of waiting, painful waiting? Could it be that God is preparing his people for that great surprise that is soon to burst upon us? I believe with all my heart that's what God is doing now. And I've been looking at my heart. You know, God is working on my little details. My father, when he became convinced about this message, he's a careful theologian, and he said, before I agreed to this message, I went to study it myself. And he called me back a time later, and he says, I'm totally convinced that's what God is doing. God is preparing his people for the great crisis and the ceiling ahead. That means even though he's already nearing his mid-80s, he had some cleaning up to do. He said, I want to clean up my kitchen. There's some things that shouldn't be in my kitchen. Imagine, 83 years old, all his life working for God, and now there's some details he has to fix up. Well, that's what I felt in my life. Are there some details in your life? Are you finding that you're facing some emotional issues? Is God bringing out of hiding issues that you should have dealt with a long time ago? Maybe generational sins? Maybe habits you've had? Maybe some things you've forgotten? That means God is preparing His people. I've been facing those kind of things. I've been making phone calls. I've been fixing my life in preparation for the last great sealing. God has brought to memory things that I need to fix in my life. Or maybe an event, a crisis of a family crisis, or something happens to you and emotions come out that you didn't know were there. That's part of what God is doing. He's preparing us for something very big. Am I still convinced? Absolutely. Some people have written to me asking me, maybe I should consider apologizing for my message. I said it wasn't my message. God gave me that message, and until He gives me another message different, I'm not going to preach anything. I'm just waiting for God to do what He's going to do. And He will show us, each of us, individually, what we are to do to prepare. The main thing is to be awake, working for the Lord. And maybe some of you, in one of the countries, one of the islands of the Caribbean, I got a phone call, and many people are moving into the country that have been living in the city. This is part of what God is doing to position His people. We know we shouldn't live in the cities. And if we are living in the cities, we are in disobedience. Generally speaking, unless God specifically called you to work there. We are living in disobedience. And God wants us to live within the instructions He has given us. In obedience means living outside the city, but we can still work in the city. Once the Sunday law comes, the universal Sunday law, we cannot work in the cities any longer. So we have a short time to work. And we have a short time in which God needs to prepare us. So our daily task, our number one priority, surrender. Surrender to the Lord and allow Him to prepare us for the loud cry that is soon to come. A cleansing, a crisis, a purification of the church, an outpouring of the Holy Spirit, and the best days that the church ever had. And then Jesus coming. I hope it's been a blessing to you. I hope these extreme faith reports has been an encouragement to you. And I pray that you and I together, all of us, under God's direction, will work shoulder to shoulder and treat each other like brethren. Give each other freedom to work. Give God the right to direct each of us. Let's not try to control each other. Let's allow God to direct us, and together He will form us into one fold and one shepherd, and then He will come. May God bless you.